This week, politicians from all sides came to St Patrick's Cathedral in Melbourne to pay their respects to Labor Senator Kimberley Kitching, who died earlier this month from a suspected heart attack, aged 52. One of those who spoke at the service was her husband, Andrew Landrieu. He spoke beautifully and put a very human face on an issue which some in the media want buried.
There's a lot I could say about the unpleasantness of a cantankerous cabal, not all of them in Parliament, that was aimed at Kimber.
A husband's grief, pointed and direct.
The intensity of it did baffle and hurt her. She deserves so very much better.
Those accused by friends of hurting Kimberley Kitching emotionally have denied she had been bullied and ostracised. Today, the trio of Senators Wong, Keneally and Gallagher sat separately, their leader apart from them too, all watching in silence.
But rather than abating, the fallout over these allegations has intensified. And while all three of these Labor senators have been uncharacteristically quiet on social media, Senator Wong fronted up for an interview with Nine's political editor, Chris Ullman, over the weekend. It did not go well for her.
Did you say to her, well, if you had children, you might understand why there is a climate emergency?
Well, they're not precisely the words I said, but
and this is
no. Let me please. I apologised as I should when I became aware that how she felt about
it. Because it became public.
Because
you had said it.
Because she never raised it with me. The approach we've taken, and I know some in the media haven't liked it, is to try and observe common decency.
Can you understand that it does appear to an outsider, it does appear to an outsider that when it's the Labor Party, there is always an excuse for this kind of behaviour, but it's never accepted if it's on the Conservative side.
Look, well,
cold, robotic and emotionless. There is also one aspect of this story that really does anger me, and Wong touched on it here briefly by saying her silence had been due to common decency. Now, all three senators have put out statements saying they wanted to be quiet out of respect for the family. People are grieving and hurting, the three senators wrote. Our priority at this time has been Senator Kitching's husband, Andrew, her family and her loved ones. Their grief is profound, their loss immeasurable. Out of respect for them and for Senator Kitching, we have not responded to allegations that have been made, despite them not being true. Well, I've spoken to Kimberley Kitching's family specifically around the media coverage by certain journalists. Not once was I told to let the issue go out of respect. That's not what those closest to Kimberley want. They actually wanted us to shine a light on some of the horrible things written about Kimberley, some of it so cruel and unbalanced, I couldn't believe an editor gave it the green light. Like this article from Crikey by Guy Rundle, which accused Kimberley of not only being a liar, but corrupt. If I don't believe Kitching's claims she was being impacted by the factional conflict she was involved in, it's because there is an established record of her being a strategic liar and of misusing official procedures and good evidence of personal corruption, he wrote. And Kimberley's family told our reporter David Wu the article was false and extremely hurtful to the point where they're considering legal actions against the author. We will seek advice on legal remedies to protect our family members from further harm caused by him, his publication, and any other online trolls, the family said. Horrible stuff. And yet I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the ABC's Virginia Trioli tweet this. In Crikey News, Guy Rundle doing great work on the controversial histories of Kimberley Kitching and Andrew Landrieu. Is that an endorsement of Rundle's claims that Kimberley was a liar and corrupt? What on earth is happening at the ABC where these crazy people are given plum jobs on the taxpayer dime to tweet stuff like this? The family has publicly said it will consider legal options for this kind of rubbish. Has the ABC learnt nothing from the high-profile defamation payouts that you paid for? And Trioli is not just cruel by giving weight to Guy Rundle's claims. She is also lazy. Remember another Albanese attempt to spin the crisis as if Kimberley Kitching herself was the sexist one for saying the phrase mean girls?
I find it astonishing that in 2022 I get a question using the term mean girls. I find that extraordinarily disrespectful to describe strong, articulate, principled women like Penny Wong, Katie Gallagher and Christina Keneally.
Virginia Trioli appears to have listened to Labor's talking points here before regurgitating them into an op-ed that you paid for. Kimberley Kitching's death has exposed a battle within the Labor Party that is playing out in sexist language like Mean Girls. Well, Kimberley was the one who used the phrase Mean Girls, so the ABC and Trioli are suggesting that Kimberley Kitching used the sexist language. I'll keep saying it because it needs to be said. You pay for this garbage. This article was retweeted by Four Corners EP, Sally Neighbour, who said Trioli nailed it in her analysis. And who's that retweeting neighbour in turn? Why, it's the programme's star reporter, Louise Milligan. At least the Four Corners crew is consistent, right?
Politicians make ethical and legal judgments that govern how the rest of society should operate, including the treatment of women. For the members of the Liberal Party we spoke to, that means the least the mostly male ministers of the Crown can do is to act with propriety and with respect for the women they work with, and live the lives they say they do.
Seemingly, the ABC's journalistic scrutiny doesn't extend to the Labor Party. The favouritism could not be any more biased. As for the confected outrage over the term Mean Girls, well, perhaps Trioli and co should be directing their anger in-house.
But where does this mean girl mentality come from? Science is exposing the hidden underbelly of female aggression. But how much of these gender differences can we really attribute to mean girl genes? Clearly, mean girls still need to learn assertiveness does not okay aggression, even if the scars are hidden.
To help me break down this and all the big news stories of the week, I'm joined by lawyer and commentator Caroline Di Russo and Outsiders co-host and federal political editor at the Daily Telegraph, James Morrow. James, let's start with you. I know you've been following this issue very close. I prematurely gave the ABC credit for actually covering the Kimberley Kitching's bullying allegations last week, but now I see that their commentators have run off. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's just incredible to me, Jack, to see the double standards that are on display here. When all of a sudden Labor has an issue and Anthony Albanese has an issue with the issue of women in Parliament, parliamentary workplace culture, how women and men get along, how women and women get along for that matter, suddenly it's radio silence. But you only have to go back, a year or so. And I can think of so many things that happened ever since we had the allegations that Brittany Higgins made about her sexual assault in Parliament, the Christian Porter allegations, on and on down the line, Grace Tame, the March for Women. This was a constant drumbeat that the Liberal Party, that the coalition had a culture problem with women, that they didn't get it, that they were gaslighting, that Scott Morrison had to, talk to Jenny, as they said, to understand what women were going through. And now all of a sudden, it's almost radio silence. 730 has run one report on Kimberley Kitching. In the 2 weeks after the Brittany Higgins allegations came out, they ran 10, and they were all about the broader culture of workplace, this, that, and the other thing. When Bridget Archer crossed the floor on the Integrity Commission and she was called into the Prime Minister's office over it, everybody made a huge deal. Oh, this is terrible. She's been called into the Prime Minister's office as bullying. And yet now you have all these Labor commentators and lefty commentators all saying, hey, look, rough and tumble politics. You get kicked off the tactics committee. Well, what do you expect? It's just so nakedly partisan and transparent, Jack.
Yeah, and Caroline, just on that, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to figure out whether these journalists are so biased and they're looking at the political situation as if we're so close to getting our guy in, we have to help get him over the line. Am I too cynical for looking at it that way?
No, you're not at all. And they appear to be really happy to torch whatever is remaining of their credibility in the process. And while the hypocrisy around this is extraordinary, it's actually really quite dangerous. And it's the consequences of it that are dangerous, because what essentially this narrative says is, well, if you're the right sort of woman, we will stand up for you. But if you're the wrong sort of woman, we are going to trash your reputation even if you are deceased. And the effect that that has is if there are women who have been mistreated by, the left and the progressive side of politics, it silences them. It stops those women coming forward with allegations of abuse because there's now this very clear example that if you try and come forward with allegations in relation to that side of politics, you won't be heard and you won't be taken seriously. They will do a hit job on your reputation. And that's what we've seen play out in the last week. And I have said this, I'm not sure how many times. Allegations all need to be tested. They all need to go through the proper procedures. It's not about believing all women in the sense of believing the substance of what they say. It's about believing that there is a serious allegation that needs to be investigated. And that there is the point that we should all be landing on. That should be bipartisan. That should not be in the context of, well, who is the allegation made against? And then we'll decide whether you're worthy or not to make that allegation.
Yes, well said. We need to look at it from a pace of impartiality as opposed to which side of politics we are barracking for. And I think that's where it's gotten so messy. But